Welcome back folks, my name is LastKnownMeal and today we're going to be talking about the next Witcher game. So the next Witcher title is going to be the most important game CDPR is going to release. Now I'm not saying this to create some unrealistic expectations for the title, saying it has to be the second coming of Christ or basically it has to be better than The Witcher 3 or it has to be as good as The Witcher 3, because when you say that then you start creating unrealistic expectations, because The Witcher 3 is one of those games which happens every 10 years and it's going to be a game which is going to be played years in the future and basically praised by the people in the future as well, just because of how good it is. Critics say that, reviews say that, and people say that, so that's the sentiment people have about it. And after The Witcher 3 came out, it really placed CDPR on the map, placing them at the top of world developers and, basically putting them on the top 5 of every company out there when it comes to gaming. But then when Cyberpunk 2077 came out, it all came crashing down. And you had a lot of problems actually come out from that company management wise, which ultimately were the downfall of that game. Now, the reason why I'm saying that the next game is so important is because that game is going to prove to us how much they have changed, and if those reorganizations within the company that Adam Kaczynski, the CEO, announced are going to come to fruition. So there is a lot of mixed opinions when it comes to the next Witcher game. I was going through different forums, Reddit, Twitter, wherever I could to actually read up on what people think. And overall, when you think about The Witcher, you have a lot of people which are saying one thing: don't screw this up, because The Witcher is a game which placed you on the map. The Witcher is the title which placed you to be the top 5 of developers, and everything, that people were saying about them and praising them. So if you have such a vibrant community of people playing The Witcher, loving The Witcher, on the back of everyone's head, including mine, there is this fear, this little fear, that what if new problems happen? What if this is not it? Now keep one thing in mind: the first problem which was going to present itself to CDPR was Red Engine. You can love-hate that engine. There is a lot of good things this engine does. There is a lot of obviously problematic things with this engine. But the first hurdle, I would say, which has been removed is actually switching to the next Unreal Engine 5. This is going to allow developers to work in an environment which is actually familiar for a lot of people, and it's going to potentially remove all of the problems Cyberpunk 2077 had, where basically the game on release was falling apart. Love-hate the game, I like the game, but there is no denying that the engine of that title even today is causing simply a lot of issues, where this game feels like you make one wrong move and everything is going to fall apart, and that's something which has been happening in my playthroughs. So now switching to Unreal Engine 5 is definitely going to be that one thing which is going to help them, because at the same time, as I said before, they have epic engineers. Basically now they can call them and they can help them out with all of those issues, and they can create new solutions for the engine itself, which is ultimately going to help the title itself. Not a lot of developers get that chance to do that, but of course, when you're CD Projekt, you have money, they have money to work with, so of course they can do that. And it's going to allow them to properly work on the game itself. So now, with that, you have a lot of people saying, please be good, please don't fail us, please don't disappoint us. And that's incredibly important thing to talk about, because ever since, Cyberpunk was in development, I was following that closely, obviously, and making videos about it. There was one time when I made the video that there is a potential problem for Cyberpunk, and I, talked about that. A lot of other YouTubers talked about that as well, and a lot of people told me that I shouldn't be criticizing CDPR, that basically everything is going to be fine and there is not going to be any issues at all. They just told me, shut up, don't talk about that. So yeah, it happened in the end. So right now I think it is incredibly important that we talk about some potential problems. It is important that we look at things objectively and realistically, because if we have an open discussion about them, we can deal with them more easily. If we're just saying that, oh yeah, everything is going to be fine now, they have fixed themselves, nothing is going to work. Because then we're avoiding the difficult questions and difficult issues which should be talked about, because ultimately that's going to help the community and that's going to help the game a lot. Because prior to Cyberpunk 2077 release, CDPR was considered to be this angel in the video game industry. They're going to be these people who are not going to disappoint us. They're going to be these people who are not gonna be riddling our games with microtransactions, and they still haven't so far. Right now, as of making this video, that's not happening. You know, Gwent is Gwent, but at the same time, it's not that predatory. But when it comes to their single player titles, they have stayed into what they are. DRM-free, offline, single player titles that you don't have to be connected to the internet to play, and you can basically just do what you want with your master copy, because there is no DRM. Obviously, do not pirate it for obvious reasons, but they don't have all of those like problematic things that other developers put into their games right now, like de novo and all of that, which ultimately does not really help the game. They always implement it in the wrong way, and it becomes a more problem than a solution for the title itself. But the problem was when you had a game like Cyberpunk 2077 come out and you're revered in this certain light, you're going to come crashing down heavily. So ever since that happened, people started worrying, people started wondering what's gonna be now happening in the future. Are we really going to get something which is going to be as good as before? Because keep in mind, a lot of OG developers also left the company, especially people who have been working on the Witcher games, the Witcher series and the Witcher 3. So historically, when you have a bunch of like OG developers leave the company, there is this thing which happens where the quality of those games degrade. Now, I'm not obviously going to diminish the work of developers who got into the company, because there is some insane talent which works at CDPR, because you can't really get a job there that easily. So it's important to also know that people who are going to be running, or who are running this project for the next Witcher game, are people who have worked on The Witcher 3 and are people who know the lore and know the universe of The Witcher. So on that sense, I think that's going to be okay from their perspective. But still, this is, as I said, going to be this game which is going to say to people, okay, did you improve, and how much have you improved, and how much have you learned? Because if the next Witcher game fails, it's going to be incredibly problematic for a lot of people, because you have a lot of OG fans who basically know CDPR from The Witcher. You have a lot of people who haven't played, you know, Cyberpunk 2077, because the only game they want from CDPR is that next Witcher game, because, you know, we love The Witcher. I mean, my channel got to where it is today, not just only because of Cyberpunk, but the foundation of this channel is The Witcher. This is the game that put me on the map on YouTube, basically, where my videos saw a lot of views. So it is also incredibly important to me to also be open and realistic and objective about all of these things, because if we talk about them, that's going to help. Now, The Witcher is a title that CDPR knows all too well. That's the title that majority of the company loves, and that's the world that majority of this company loves. And honestly, you wouldn't know about The Witcher today if there wasn't for CDPR. The books are great, which Andrzej Sapkowski wrote them, there is no denying that, but at the same time, The Witcher was popular in Poland, it was popular in Eastern Europe, it was popular, semi-popular here in Bosnia, so at the same time it wasn't as popular as it was in the West. But then you had all of those games come out, especially The Witcher 3, which basically introduced a lot of people from the US or from more of the West, you know, about the game and everything else. So you also have Netflix The Witcher show because of the video games, there is no denying that. Like you would never have Netflix The Witcher series if there wasn't for CDPR. So they also have a huge weight on their shoulders right now, because you are the only one who people trust when it comes to The Witcher. Because honestly, I wouldn't like any other studio to make me a Witcher game. I just wouldn't. I don't see one studio which would be able to create a Witcher game that would be the same as CDPR does it, due to the feeling, the atmosphere, and everything happening in the game itself and how the game plays out. So their next title has to work. It has to work. I mean, it doesn't have to be the next second coming of Christ, but it has to be a title which is going to finally restore the face of CDPR, because right now you have a lot of people who are worried. there is a small part of me which is worried as well about all of the things, coming, because the management and the marketing were a huge issue for Cyberpunk 2077, where marketing was not following the development and what developing was actually trying to achieve. Then you also had conflicting ideas through the development, many revisions, many changes to the game, which ultimately did not give the developers a lot of wiggle room to implement everything and to just fulfill the vision that they actually wanted for the game itself. So now I hope that for the next Witcher game, this vision is going to be unified. Now, of course, every single game goes through revisions and changes through different testings to see if something works or not. But it's important to have one goal which is going to be followed, and one principle, or at least ideas, which are going to be followed when it comes to mechanics, when it comes to how the game plays out, when it comes to how the story is going to be developed and everything, because this is going to be a new story as well. This is going to be the first Witcher game where we're not going to play as Geralt of Rivia. People still try to tell me that it's going to be Geralt of Rivia. No, it's not. Like CDPR told everyone they're done with Geralt. I mean, Geralt might appear in this game as a guest, or maybe there's going to be some Easter egg, but Geralt as a main character, as a protagonist, is done. Over. Now we're gonna be playing with someone else. Who is that going to be? New Witcher? City? Is it going to be create your own Witcher kind of a game? We don't know. We don't know how is it going to be playing out. The only thing we do know is going to be in Unreal Engine 5, which is great because, as I said, Red Engine is great, but it's also very problematic, and switching to this is definitely that first step which tells us, okay, you're finally ready to let go of that and you're finally ready to try out something new, because the next Witcher game is going to be different than any other game you played. Every single engine you play around with, everything, is going to feel different, because Red Engine is one thing, Unreal is something totally different. Also keep one thing in mind, The Witcher 3 even to this day is still a big money maker for CDPR. Like every single quarterly report or yearly report always shows that The Witcher 3 is basically selling like hotcakes even to this day, and that's a big, cash flow for CDPR. Now, Cyberpunk is never going to sell as many copies as The Witcher 3. There is no chance that is going to happen. Maybe in like 10-15 years, but keep in mind The Witcher 3 is still going to be sold even then, so of course it's always going to stay on top as the most, top selling game CDPR has released. So now with, the release of Cyberpunk, they made their money back, there is no denying that. They have, paid out for all of that development, but at the same time, it's not going to be a title which is going to give you that constant cash flow in the future. So now you need to have a title which is going to do that, because at the end of the day, Witcher 3 can sell, but it can only sell so much before it hits market saturation, before everyone who has played the title played it, and everyone who doesn't play the title is never going to play the title. So now you need something new, which is going to be that, not cash cow, I know that might sound wrong, but a title which is going to make you money years in the future, because now you have to make more games. And CDPR, as from what I've seen, they really want to branch out and they really want to create new games. That's why they have the Molasses Flood, which is coming out with a new title. They have a new Gwent game, they have all of that, which again is great, but it's not going to be your main money maker. So as much as I'm excited for the next Witcher game, because it's okay to be excited about a video game, but it's also important to be realistic and not to hype yourself up to like insane levels where you're not going to see problems of the title and where you're not going to see maybe that something is wrong. Right now we cannot know that, and at the same time do not expect the next Witcher game to come out anytime soon. And I'm okay with that, for as long as they take it slowly and for as long as the final product on release is going to be good, because the first impressions are incredibly important today. People on social media today are even more polarized than they ever were in the past, and you can say, yeah, that's the internet, yeah, but now it's incredibly crazy. Like for PR people, for marketing people, you really have to make good, sane slow decisions, otherwise people are going to take that, they're gonna clip it, and they're going to tell you, oh yeah, you say you're going to do this, but you didn't do it at the end. That's why you have a lot of people saying, well, what about the missing features in Cyberpunk, what about this, what about that? So that always comes back. And you know, the marketing for Cyberpunk did not really do any good of it. Like it made it very popular, but at the same time it was one of the biggest hurdles of this game, and they posted a lot of spoilers in those trailers, which I hope they never happen again in the next Witcher like promotion, when that starts happening in like 70 years. And of course, until the game doesn't come out, I will always now have that fear, as many people do have right now, like what if it doesn't, if it's not good, what if it fails? And it's healthy to have that, you know, thinking. It's healthy to think about that, because that's going to help you to look at things objectively and realistically, and hopefully doesn't increase the hype levels to insane heights again. Because I hope that the same mistakes do not happen again. They kept happening a lot, but I hope they don't. So that's my video for today. Hopefully you enjoyed it. This is something that I wanted to talk about for, you know, ever since that new Witcher game was announced. So hopefully everything is alright with the development. Hopefully that in the end we get a game that all of us are going to love. But what's gonna be happening, that's gonna be for just, you know, waiting and see, because right now we can't really do anything about it. And I wish them all the best. Truly, I do, because I'm gonna be excited for this, but I'm going to be cautiously optimistic. Just be cautious, and that's my advice to all of you. But I want to hear your thoughts on this. Don't forget to tell me down below, what do you think about this? What are your biggest fears that you have for the next Witcher game? What things do you want to be changed in the next Witcher game? What things do you want CDPR to keep from like the Witcher 3 or the previous Witcher games in the next Witcher game, which made it great? Tell me all of that down below, and don't forget to also smash that like and subscribe button if you enjoyed this video, and also don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Discord, and huge thanks to my current Patreon supporters. This is LKM signing out. Stay classy everyone, and bye bye.